The council chamber dimmed without warning, and the luminous rings above the amphitheater pulsed as if struck from within. The Treaty of Earth, an ancient nanite codex suspended in a containment field, twisted violently. Its pages folded and unfolded like metallic wings struggling against an invisible grip. Delegates recoiled. Guards paused mid-stride. The energy in the room tightened, almost brittle. Commander Lyra Hale did not move. She stood at the center dais, posture straight, expression composed, watching the treaty shudder under foreign command. Earth's delegation remained silent behind her, a formation of calm faces amid a storm of alien agitation. High Consul Vrathek extended a serrated hand toward the containment field. The codex snapped shut with a metallic shriek as his authority override pierced the chamber's protocols. By decree of the Council, he announced, the Sovereign Treaty of Earth is hereby placed under emergency review. Custodianship is revoked. A murmur rippled through the amphitheater. Some species whispered disbelief, others radiated satisfaction. Lyra registered every reaction without turning her head. Her heartbeat remained steady. That treaty, she said, voice level, is protected under Article 7. Forced seizure requires unanimous consent. Vrathek's gill plates fluttered with amusement. Your understanding of council law remains provincial. 2 Dominion guards stepped forward, bioplasma restraints humming. They reached for the floating codex. Its nanite lattice writhed, resisting. The chamber lights flickered. Telepathic echo walls pulsed as if the structure itself objected. Lyra raised a hand, not in protest, but as formal acknowledgement. Earth records the unlawful confiscation of its sovereign document. Vrathek turned fully toward her, reptilian eyes narrowing. Your record is irrelevant. The review proceeds. He motioned toward the council audience. Screens ignited above the chamber, displaying dossiers, accusations, and manipulated projections hinting at Earth's uncontrolled militarization. Lyra recognized the curated images immediately, old simulations framed as active threats. The council had prepared this ambush long before the summons arrived. A Quran priest clicked its mandibles. Human expansion is unpredictable. Their death world physiology makes them dangerously adaptive. A Vexer strategist added, their gravitational research contradicts the accord. They distort space without regulatory oversight. Lyra let the accusations hang for a moment, measuring the atmosphere. Every species watched her, waiting for the sudden human eruption they feared. She denied them satisfaction. Earth's research has been audited 6 times, she replied. Every audit cleared us. Your projections are fabrications. Vrathek gestured dismissively. Technicalities. Lyra descended 1 step from the dais, her boots echoing in the chamber's hollow acoustics. You invited us here under pretext. This entire proceeding violates procedural integrity. The High Consul leaned forward, his elongated shadow cast over her. Humanity grew too quickly. You threaten balance. The Council cannot rely on your self-restraint. She met his gaze without blinking. You misunderstand our restraint. A cluster of Urati delegates stiffened at her tone, quiet, controlled, yet edged with unmistakable warning. Lyra read their microtremors, fear, not of violence, but of certainty. Vrathek lifted the treaty, now locked within a Dominion field. The codex flickered, its internal lattice destabilizing from forced separation. This artifact will be reviewed and reinterpreted. Should the Council determine Earth no longer qualifies for sovereign status, the accord will be amended. Lyra spoke clearly. Earth invokes Article 7. You cannot. Vrathek's voice sharpened. That clause requires a justified threat to autonomy. You seized our treaty, she replied. That qualifies. The chamber rumbled as the echo walls processed her declaration. Energy signatures flared, documenting her claim for permanent record. Delegates exchanged uneasy glances. No species invoked Article 7 lightly, it marked the threshold between diplomacy and existential defense. Vrathek's expression darkened. Article 7 is subject to Council interpretation. Then interpret this, she answered, removing a thin crystalline strip from her sleeve. She inserted it into her console. The chamber screens shifted. A dormant clause illuminated in ancient script, Protocol Obsidian. A sharp hiss spread across the amphitheater. Several delegates recoiled. Others whispered in disbelief. Vrathek's voice faltered. That protocol is obsolete. Lyra responded with precision. It remains active until formally retired. No record exists of its retirement. Protocol Obsidian, ancestor of Earth's membership terms, allowed a sovereign species to override council interference when facing coordinated coercion. It authorized defensive autonomy measures the council feared to acknowledge. You would invoke such a clause? Vrathek demanded. This chamber is not under threat. It is, Lyra said calmly. By you. For a moment, silence dominated. Even the containment field quieted, the codex stabilizing as if listening. Lyra let the stillness expand, drawing every gaze toward her. Humans had always been underestimated, quiet strength unsettled the galaxy more than force. A Jir diplomat broke the silence. If Earth activates Obsidian, the Accord's foundations fracture. They already have, Lyra replied. Vrathek slammed his hand against the console. Remove that clause from record. A dozen delegates objected instantly, legality demanded it remain. The conflict widened. Lines formed among factions, some fearing Earth's retaliation, others seeing an opportunity to weaken humanity. Lyra watched the shifting alliances with measured calm. Every motion in the hall confirmed her suspicion. The seizure had been orchestrated, not spontaneous. She stepped back to the center of the dais. Earth will not contest the review. We will only insist the council reveal its intentions openly. Vrathek's lip curled. Our intention is order. No, Lyra said quietly. Your intention is control. The room tightened again. Her voice held no aggression, only clarity. And clarity, presented without fear, cut deeper than accusation. Vrathek turned to the assembly. Proceed to vote on temporary suspension of Earth's sovereignty during review. A chorus of agreement rose from predictable factions. Others hesitated, sensing danger in moving too quickly. Lyra lowered her hands to her sides, palms open, posture neutral. She knew the vote would pass. She also knew what it would unlock. As the final numbers tallied across the screens, Vrathek looked victorious. Suspension approved. Lyra exhaled once, slow and controlled. The codex pulsed, reacting to her biometric signature even inside its prison. A ripple of unease rippled through the chamber. She spoke softly, yet every translator carried her words like a blade. Then Earth acknowledges your decision. And we will answer in kind. The lights dimmed again. The treaty flickered violently. Delegates felt a tremor beneath their feet, distant, subtle, but unmistakable. Something old had awakened. And Lyra did not look away. The chamber's tremor faded, but its echo lingered in every delegate's posture. Screens still displayed the vote suspending Earth's sovereignty, yet no one celebrated. Attention had settled over the amphitheater, dense, waiting, aware that something fundamental had shifted. Commander Lyra Hale stood alone on the dais, hands clasped behind her back. Her expression was unreadable, but her silence drew the attention of every species in the hall. Humans had a reputation for volatility, the absence of any reaction felt unnatural, unsettling. A thin courier drone glided toward Lyra, its wings humming softly. It projected a secured message. Earth's analysts had uncovered metadata buried within council transmissions. She skimmed the encrypted summary. It confirmed her expectation. This was not a spontaneous vote. It was an orchestrated act. Lyra lifted her gaze. I submit evidence of premeditated seizure. The Council's emergency summons references documents drafted 6 months before Earth received notice. A wave of discomfort passed across the delegates. Vrathek's jaw tensed. Fabrications, he said sharply. You assume malice where none exists. Lyra expanded the projection. Draft memos appeared, each marked with internal council signatures. They outlined a phased plan: isolate Earth politically, reinterpret its treaty, and force it into compliance. The oldest file bore Vrathek's personal authorization. A triumvirate officer leaned forward. "High Consul, these timestamps are authentic." Vrathek gave a strained laugh. "You question the integrity of this chamber?" "Humans manipulate data with remarkable skill." Lyra didn't rise to the accusation. She retracted the projection and replaced it with another, a fleet deployment map showing foreign ships repositioning near human space. "Your forces moved 3 weeks before the summons," she said. "Explain that." The hall erupted: accusations, objections, demands for clarification. Lyra remained motionless, letting the uproar build. The more the factions argued among themselves, the more fractured their unity became. A Quran priest turned toward her. "Why would the Dominion prepare fleets against a council member?" it asked, eyes narrowing. "High Consul, does this not suggest intent to coerce?" Vrathek snapped, "Silence. The Dominion answers to no outsider, least of all a Deathworld species." The insult hung in the air. Lyra didn't react. She focused instead on a new disturbance: the Treaty Codex, still trapped in its containment field, pulsed erratically. Its nanite pages warped, edges burning with unstable energy. A Urati biologist shivered. "The artifact is destabilizing. Forced confinement disrupts its memory lattice." The chamber lights flickered again. The echo walls vibrated, capturing the rising emotional intensity. Lyra stepped closer to the codex. "Release the artifact before it collapses." Vrathek barked, "No. It remains in council custody." Lyra didn't argue. She simply waited. Moments later, the codex emitted a low harmonic pulse, deep enough to shake dust from the ceiling arch. The containment field cracked with a bright fracture. Delegates flinched back. A burst of energy erupted from the artifact, casting glyphs across every surface. They weren't random, they were treaty clauses never shown to the Council since Earth's admission. Hidden terms. Forgotten terms. Or deliberately erased ones. The chamber fell silent as the holographic text translated automatically. Earth's original treaty granted dual recognition, sovereign rights and a mandate to safeguard galactic borders against extragalactic predators. Gasps echoed through the tiers. The implication was immediate: the Council had depended on Earth far more than it acknowledged. And someone had buried that truth. A Vexer tactician trembled. Why was this removed from archival records? Lyra answered without turning. Ask the ones who benefited from its disappearance. Vrathek spat, lies. Obsolete provisions, rejected long ago. Lyra extended a hand toward the floating text. These glyphs predate Council archival modifications. They show the treaty's unaltered form. We met your conditions. You removed your obligations. Whispers became frantic conversation. The Council now faced not only unlawful seizure but evidence of suppressed history. Reputations unraveled, and alliances wavered. A Jir delegate addressed Lyra directly. If these terms are true, humanity has acted as our shield for decades. Lyra nodded once. Yes. The Vexer tactician's voice shook. Why hide such service? We didn't, Lyra replied. You did. Attention snapped back to Vrathek. His gills fluttered rapidly, signaling stress. Yet he attempted confidence. Even if accurate, Earth cannot wield these terms against us. Lyra approached the dais edge. You already suspended our sovereignty. That nullifies our mandate. The hall froze. If Earth is no longer a sovereign protector, she continued, then Earth is no longer bound to defend the rim. A collective intake of breath followed. Factions exchanged fearful glances. The rim, dark, ancient, unpredictable, was not merely a border. It was a frontier holding back the unknown. Vrathek pointed at her. You threaten the galaxy to secure your pride. Lyra shook her head. I issue no threat. I state the consequence of your choice. As if responding to her words, the codex emitted another harmonic burst, projecting images recorded decades earlier, gravitational anomalies near the rim, unknown silhouettes brushing sensor range, colossal shapes drifting through void. Delegates recoiled as the chamber filled with the faint recordings of subspace frequencies, deep, predatory, resonant. A Quran priest whispered a prayer. The devourers, the ones from First Contact myths. Lyra allowed the projections to fade before speaking again. Humanity fought these incursions before joining the Council. We've kept them at bay quietly, efficiently. We honored our treaty. A Urati scientist leaned forward. If Earth steps back. Lyra finished the thought. The frontier opens. Panic erupted, nothing dramatic, but sharp mutters and harsh breaths. The chamber realized the cost of its decision. For decades, they had relied on humans without admitting it. And now, through arrogance, they risked losing that protection. Vrathek slammed a claw against his console. Enough! You manipulate through fear. Lyra met his gaze. Fear isn't my tool. Truth is. The High Consul gestured toward security. Arrest the human delegation. Guards advanced, but the codex pulsed again. Its lattice shed sparks, destabilizing the containment field entirely. A surge shot across the floor, shorting the guards' equipment. Their weapons powered down instantly. Stand down, Lyra said quietly, not as a command but as acknowledgement of inevitability. The codex settled into stillness, breathing, almost, but its warning lingered. Even the echo walls seemed hesitant to process the emotional signatures filling the chamber. Lyra stepped back to the dais center. Earth will allow your review to continue, she said. But understand the weight of your actions. A dozen delegates turned to her. What do you propose? Asked the Vexer tactician, voice thin. Transparency, she replied. Vote with full knowledge, revoke our sovereignty and lose our shield, or honor the treaty as written. Vrathek hissed, you gamble with all our lives. Lyra's expression didn't change. You began this gamble when you seized the treaty. A silence settled, heavier than before. Delegates studied the projections still shimmering faintly on the screens. The codex's pulse had quieted, but its presence dominated the chamber. Lyra left the final words for those who understood the stakes. A Jir diplomat whispered into the quiet, if the shield falls, the darkness moves. Lyra met the diplomat's eyes. Then choose wisely. The chamber dimmed again, not from malfunction, but from fear. The Council's illusions had cracked. And now every member understood exactly what they risked. The vote ahead would decide not only Earth's fate, but the galaxy's. Lyra stood motionless, waiting. The next move belonged to them. The chamber lights rose to full brightness, revealing every tense expression in unforgiving clarity. Delegates leaned forward, some gripping their consoles, others holding their breath as if a single exhale might shift the balance of the moment. The Council vote appeared on the central display, glowing lines tallying in real time. Lyra Hale didn't move. Her face remained perfectly composed, but her eyes tracked each numeric shift. She saw what everyone already sensed, the anti-Earth coalition held enough influence to push the decision through. They wanted this outcome, even if they hadn't understood what their ambition invited. The board finalized with a sharp chime. Sovereignty suspended. Treaty invalidated. Review irreversible. A hush dropped across the hall. Even those who had voted yes now looked uneasy, realizing the implications with sobering clarity. Vrathek straightened, relief cutting through his rigid posture. The Council has spoken, he said, amplifying his voice across the amphitheater. Humanity is no longer granted independent authority under the Accord. Enforcement measures begin immediately. Lyra placed her palm on the dais console. The codex responded instantly. A deep harmonic pulse rolled through the chamber, something ancient stirring awake. Nanite script ignited across the artifact's surface like molten metal forming thoughts. Delegates recoiled as energy rippled outward, bypassing every restraint. Lyra spoke softly, but every speaker carried her voice without distortion. Earth activates Protocol Obsidian. The chamber froze. A single moment of disbelief broke into a cascade of panic. No! Vrathek lunged forward, claws extended, but the codex unleashed a second pulse that slammed into the floor like a silent quake. Council guards staggered. Systems flickered. The echo walls recorded the spike in emotional signatures, fear, dread, uncertainty, capturing it all permanently. Every delegate watched as the codex lifted from the shattered containment field and projected a galaxy-wide communication array. Subspace frequencies intertwined, resonant threads spiraling outward. Lyra didn't raise her voice. By council vote, Earth's sovereignty is revoked. Under Protocol Obsidian, Earth's mandate to protect the Rim is nullified. Our shield is withdrawn. The chamber erupted into chaos. The Urati delegation shouted over one another. You cannot suspend defense duties. The Accord binds every member to galactic safety. Lyra met them with calm certainty. You removed us from membership. Screens flickered to life above them, the Council's deep space sensors. At first, static. Then movement. Shapes breaching the rim, silhouettes gliding between gravity fractures. Massive forms disturbed the void itself. A Vexor strategist clutched the edge of the table. Impossible, nothing has crossed those thresholds in decades. Lyra didn't turn toward the screens. They've learned patience. Vrathek spun toward her, voice cracking. Deactivate the protocol. Reinstate your duties. You lack the authority to compel us, Lyra replied. The vote erased your leverage. Delegates shouted over one another, some pleading, some demanding, some realizing the irreversible mistake made moments earlier. A Jir diplomat, usually composed, trembled openly. How fast will they reach council space? Lyra answered without softness. Speed has never been the threat. Persistence is. A cluster of Dominion guards rushed forward to detain her, but their armor seized mid-step. Joints locked. Visors flickered to black. Earth's nanite signature pulsed along their exosuits, shutting them down one by one. Lyra didn't glance at them. Attempting to arrest a diplomat under suspended treaty protections demonstrates further violation of protocol. Vrathek hissed, you manipulate this chamber with theatrics. She stepped forward, unarmed, unprotected, but radiating a calm that unsettled everyone who saw it. No theatrics. Only clarity. You seized our rights. Now you face the consequences of carrying them alone. The screens intensified, showing more rim breaches. Sensor markers fluttered between recognition and error, unable to classify the objects approaching. Pressure rose in the chamber like a storm building overhead. A Quran priest whispered, if they advance unchallenged, they will consume outer sectors. Lyra's reply was measured. Correct. Delegates turned toward Vrathek, their faces shifting from accusation to outright blame. A Urati biologist pointed at him with a trembling arm. You forced this vote. You hid the original treaty. You endangered us all. Vrathek's gills flared wildly. Earth is the danger, not the Rim. The Rim never moved, Lyra said. You did. The Codex projected the original treaty clauses again, unaltered, undeniable. Recordings of past Rim engagements resurfaced, showing Earth's silent battles in forgotten sectors. Ships returning scarred, but victorious. Energy signatures from entities too large to comprehend. A triumvirate officer whispered, you faced those things alone? Because we agreed to, Lyra said. Another pulse rolled through the chamber as outer sensors spiked. Delegates braced themselves. Deep frequencies shook the air, an echo from the void. One species screeched, reverse the vote. Restore their sovereignty. Others echoed the demand, panic-stitching alliances that had never existed before. The chamber devolved into open desperation. Lyra waited until the fear reached its peak. Then she spoke. Earth will accept reinstatement. Heads turned sharply. But, she continued, with full restoration of original treaty terms. Vrathek bared his teeth. You want leverage over the council? No. I want honesty, she said. You rely on our strength. Admit it openly. A Urati elder stood shakily. We accept the terms. Another delegate rose. Reinstate Earth. A third. Then a fourth. Momentum surged. Even factions previously aligned with Vrathek began to shift under the weight of looming catastrophe. Lyra watched without triumph. She didn't need victory. She needed acknowledgement. Finally, the last opposing faction folded. Only Vrathek refused, claws digging into the console. This chamber will not submit to human intimidation, he growled. Lyra regarded him without malice. You misunderstand us even now. The codex pulsed a final time, projecting the rim one last time. The colossal shapes hesitated, pausing as if tasting the sudden shift in galactic tension. Lyra stepped onto the final platform. We do not intimidate. We prepare. The chamber held its breath. Urati, Quran, Jir, Vexer, Triumvirate, every faction activated their consoles simultaneously. A unified vote, clean, fast, absolute. Earth's sovereignty reinstated. Treaty restored. Original clauses recognized. The moment the vote passed, the codex stabilized. Energy threads collapsed neatly back into the artifact's core. The rim silhouettes receded, drifting away from the border as if some unseen deterrent had returned to its post. Vrathek staggered, realization dawning too late. You never feared losing sovereignty. No, Lyra said quietly. We feared losing trust. He collapsed into his seat as the chamber doors sealed and the vote recorded permanently. Delegates watched Lyra with a mixture of awe, relief, and something deeper, respect tempered by fear. She stepped from the dais, walking with steady precision toward the exit. Before leaving, she spoke one final sentence, delivered without theatrics, without threat, simply truth. Next time you question our place in this galaxy, remember, Earth did not rise alone. The doors opened. The chamber remained silent long after she was gone. Lyra Hale stepped into the broad corridor outside the council chamber, leaving behind the flickering screens, collapsing alliances, and shattered pride of 100 species. The ornate passageway's polished floors reflected the faint tremor still lingering through the citadel, an echo of protocol obsidian fading but not forgotten. The silence out here differed from the one inside. It lacked panic. Instead, it carried a sense of recognition, a recalibration of how the galaxy viewed her kind. 2 human envoys hurried to her side, faces tight with questions they didn't dare ask. Lyra halted them with a raised hand. Status report, she said. Ambassador Wells steadied himself. Outer rim anomalies withdrew. Sensor readings returned to baseline. No pursuit. Response from Earth, she asked. They received the broadcast. The Council's reinstatement is confirmed. Earth Command expresses confidence in your judgment. Lyra allowed the faintest exhale. Good. Before they could speak further, a cluster of Council aides approached, nervous, careful, carrying an invitation sealed by the Jir diplomatic circle. The lead aide extended it with trembling hands. Commander Hale, the Council requests your presence at a post-vote reconciliation briefing. Lyra studied the seal. Reconciliation, she repeated quietly, the word more of a gesture than a promise. She accepted the invitation, nodded once, and moved toward the upper forum. As she walked, she noted the way delegates reacted upon seeing her, heads bowed, spines straightened, conversation paused. Not out of fear, that would have been too simple. This was recognition of a truth the chamber had long resisted: humanity was not the reckless upstart species they imagined, but a force tempered by survival, sharpened by responsibility, and guided by a calm very few understood. Inside the forum, representatives from 12 major factions waited around a circular table. Their expressions were composed but uneasy. They had voted unanimously to reinstate Earth, but they had done so while drowning in panic. Now they sought to understand what they had nearly destroyed. A Jir diplomat motioned to an open seat. "Commander Hale, thank you for meeting with us." "Lyra, Saturday your message said reconciliation. I assume you intend more than an apology." An Urati elder cleared his throat. "We must reevaluate our relationship with your world. Today exposed what many of us failed to grasp." Lyra folded her hands. "Which part?" "The truth," the elder said. "That Earth acted as the barrier we depended on, while we treated you as a liability." A Vexer strategist added, "We interpreted your silence as defiance. We now see it as discipline." Lyra remained still. "Understanding comes late. But late is better than never." A flicker of irritation crossed the face of the Quran priest. "You speak as if you hold the galaxy's fate in your hands." "I don't," Lyra answered. "Earth doesn't want dominion. We want honesty, stable borders, and a council that honors its agreements." "And the Rim?" asked the priest. "Do you intend to resume your watch?" Lyra studied them carefully. "We will rise when called upon. But the mandate returns only because the treaty stands intact." A weighted silence settled over the table. Vrathek entered unexpectedly, his movements stiff, his authority visibly broken. He ignored the empty seat reserved for him and chose instead to stand, unwilling to appear diminished by sitting among those who had abandoned him. He addressed Lyra directly. "This chamber bends too easily. You forced their hand with fear." Lyra met his gaze without hostility. "I forced nothing. I revealed truth. They chose how to respond." The High Consul's jaw tightened. "Humanity is dangerous." "Dangerous to whom?" she asked. Vrathek had no answer. His silence said everything. One of the triumvirate envoys spoke next. "The Council proposes a new clause. A transparency mandate for both Earth and all major factions. You will no longer act in the shadows at the Rim. And we will no longer act behind closed doors regarding treaty affairs." Lyra considered the proposal. "Transparency strengthens trust. Earth has no objection." Vrathek's head snapped toward the envoy. "You grant them too much." The envoy replied calmly, "We granted them nothing. We acknowledged what already existed." Lyra rose from her seat. "If this meeting's purpose is to assign future responsibilities, then I have one request." The delegates leaned forward. "Document everything that happened today," she said. "Do not bury the fear you felt. Do not hide the consequence of your decision. Pretending this moment never happened would guarantee it repeats." The Urati elder nodded slowly. "Agreed." Vrathek glared at her. "You enjoy humiliating this chamber." Lyra walked toward him, stopping at a respectful distance. "No. I enjoy seeing truth prevail. The humiliation comes from your choices, not mine." His chest heaved with restrained anger, but he said nothing. The meeting adjourned. Delegates dispersed in subdued clusters. Lyra remained a moment longer, letting the silence settle over her. She had not come seeking dominance, she had come to defend Earth's place. But in doing so, she had shifted the axis of galactic politics. As she exited the forum, Wells approached again. "Commander, Earth requests a secure briefing upon your return. They want your full assessment of Council stability." "Understandable," she replied. "We need to know whether today's unity lasts longer than the fear that created it." A chime sounded through the hall, an announcement tone rarely used. A holographic banner unfurled along the corridor, broadcasting an emergency from the Rim. Lyra and Wells stopped instantly. A station's voice filled the air. "To all Council members, unidentified gravitational disturbance detected near Outpost Hell Ion. No breach confirmed. Containment holding. Monitoring continues." Wells exhaled with relief. Residual turbulence from earlier events, most likely. Lyra wasn't convinced. "Or reconnaissance," she said quietly. He hesitated. "Do you believe they're testing the boundary?" "They always test the boundary," she replied. "The question is whether they find it weakened or restored." As they continued toward the shuttle bay, Lyra reviewed the day's events in stark detail. The revelations, the panic, the vote, the withdrawal, the reinstatement, each moment exposed a flaw in the Council's structure. They had built a system expecting compliance, not partnership. Humanity had broken that expectation forever. Near the bay doors, she paused and looked back at the towering chamber spires. The Citadel no longer felt like a place of judgment. It felt like a place that had been forced to recognize its own fragility. Wells activated the shuttle sequence. "Commander, final thoughts before we depart?" Lyra stepped aboard, her voice steady. Today was not victory. It was correction. The galaxy now understands the cost of arrogance. She secured her harness as the shuttle engines warmed. Through the viewport, the luminous rings of the Council Citadel glowed with renewed vigilance. "Will they change?" Wells asked. "They will try," she said. "But change isn't permanent until it survives peace." The shuttle detached, gliding into open space where the gas giant swirled below, luminous storms tracing patterns older than any council. Lyra watched the horizon, aware of something vast watching back, something patient, something waiting for weakness. She whispered to herself, not in fear but resolve. "We'll be ready." And for the first time since Earth joined the Council, the galaxy understood that readiness was not a warning. It was a promise.